What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. So as we return to our Versus series this week, today we're going to be taking a look at a matchup that may not seem like an obvious one to do at first, but I think that it actually makes for a pretty interesting battle because these two competitors are so different from one another. Today, we're gonna pit the greatest detective of the DC universe against Marvel's unstoppable Juggernaut. And the reason why I chose this battle is because these two characters really exemplify the ultimate battle of brains and brawn. On one hand, you have Batman, who has no superpowers, but defeats all of his opponents through planning, strategy, and technology. On the other hand, you have Juggernaut, a character who's afforded extreme strength by way of a mystical artifact. And so like always, before we declare a winner, we first have to take a look at each of these guys. Now, assuming that you've been part of human civilization for the last 100 years, you probably have a pretty good idea of who Batman is and what he can do. But on the off chance that you're new to humanity, meaning that you're like an alien, or you've just never had a reason to learn about one of the most popular superheroes of all time, please post a comment down below and tell me if you've never heard of Batman, if you don't know anything about Batman. And if somebody posts that comment, do not give them a hard time, all right? Like you'll get in trouble, all right? You'll be in trouble, and that's, that's not okay. But assuming that you never had time to learn about Batman, we'll take a few minutes and run down exactly what it is that he can do. So Batman is a pretty formidable fighter. I mean, he's highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, and he's an expert martial artist, and he's actually been trained in about 127 forms of martial arts. Now, this training paired with his peak physical condition make Batman one of the most elite fighters in the DC universe. Even more important than this, however, is his almost inexhaustible wealth. And the reason why I say this is that it's Batman's wealth that allows him to develop and acquire all the technology that makes Batman able to be a superhero, like his body armor, the Batmobile, the Batwing, and all the other gadgets that he uses to fight supervillains. In addition to this, he has an extensive computer system in the Batcave that allows him to do basically anything he needs to do in order to gain an advantage over his opponents. Now, having gone over Batman, we'll turn our attention to the Juggernaut, who I think needs a little more of an explanation, because you'd have to be a crazy person to believe that the Juggernaut is as well known as Batman. I don't mean to call you crazy, the idea is crazy. Anyway, the Juggernaut draws his power from an object known as the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak, which is quite literally a gem that bestows immense strength and durability on the person who wields it by channeling the crimson energy of the demon Cyttorak in the Crimson Dimension. Now, as the avatar of Cyttorak, Juggernaut possesses superhuman strength to the extent that he's been able to break mountains apart like he did in Hulk number 172. He can lift buildings out of the ground and use them as weapons like he did in Uncanny X-Men number 361. Juggernaut's durability also allows him to withstand a great deal of physical damage, and in addition to this, he's able to use the gem's energy to generate a force field that renders him immune to basically any physical attack, even from characters as strong as Thor, which the Juggernaut did in Thor number 429 when he was able to withstand a direct impact from Mjolnir. Now, in addition to this ability to absorb damage, Juggernaut is able to survive without air, food, or water and does not suffer physical fatigue, meaning that in addition to his almost instantaneous healing factor, once the Juggernaut begins moving, it's almost physically impossible to stop him. However, one apparent weakness of the Juggernaut is psychic attacks. While his helmet did protect him from such attacks, there have been instances when his helmet was removed, leaving him vulnerable once again. However, this weakness appears to have been retconned in issue number 19 of the second volume of Amazing X-Men, when Kane Marco was once again given the power of Cyttorak after spending years without it. Now, with that being said, we have to answer the question. Who would win, Batman or Juggernaut? Well, first and foremost, I think it's pretty obvious that if both of these characters met one another for the first time and engaged in battle, Juggernaut would score a pretty decisive victory. I mean, Batman would simply have no way of inflicting any damage on Juggernaut in any form whatsoever, and so his proficiency as a fighter would be virtually irrelevant and wouldn't really do him any good. However, I can hear it right now. I don't care how far away you are, I can hear the voices right now. Rob, what about prep time? Of course, you can't expect Batman to defeat Juggernaut sight unseen, but if you give him time to prepare, Batman can defeat anyone. And honestly, this actually raises a pretty interesting point. A lot of fans really do hold the opinion that because Batman has basically infinite resources as well as the intellect to figure out his opponent's weaknesses, that there's pretty much no one Batman cannot defeat given adequate time to scout his opponent and develop a plan to beat them. And now the reason this is interesting, however, is because I don't think Batman has ever faced an opponent quite like the Juggernaut. And certainly there isn't anyone in Batman's rogues gallery that can compare to Juggernaut in terms of physical strength. We've seen Bane give Batman significant trouble, even to the point of breaking his back, but we haven't seen anything in comics to suggest that Bane is anywhere near Juggernaut's level of strength. And while it's true Batman has taken down Superman, that's always been because Batman knows Superman's biggest weakness, which is kryptonite, and has found ways to use it against him. With Juggernaut, however, things are not so easy. As we discussed earlier, Juggernaut's biggest weakness is telepathic attacks, which has been retconned out of existence. But even if we put that to the side, it's pretty much impossible for Batman to exploit this weakness anyway. While kryptonite may be rare, someone with Batman's wealth and connections will be able to acquire it without too much difficulty, to say nothing of the fact that he can synthesize it like he did in Tower of Babel. What would prove difficult, however, would be for Batman to exploit Juggernaut's weakness of telepathy, seeing as Batman is not a telepath and has no way of becoming one. Although I don't know. I want to see a story where Batman becomes a telepath. But with that in mind, in order to defeat Juggernaut, Batman is going to have to find a way to go toe-to-toe with Juggernaut physically. Now, Batman definitely has ways of making himself physically stronger. There have been instances where Batman's done this, usually by outfitting himself with a suit of mechanized armor. And we've actually seen Batman have a suit that is so durable that he's been able to defeat the rest of the Justice League while wearing it during the endgame arc of Scott Snyder's Batman run. Now, this is yet another example in support of the fact that Batman can be a formidable foe for anyone with adequate time to prepare, since he obviously would be no match for the Justice League from a purely physical standpoint. And so it's at least theoretically possible for Batman to use such an armor to make up for his physical disadvantage in this battle with the Juggernaut. However, there are some important distinctions that we need to focus on here. First, Batman's battle with the Justice League ends when he subdues Superman using kryptonite, so we don't really know how long Batman's armor would have held up against a continued onslaught of punches from Superman had he not been able to incapacitate him. Furthermore, we don't know how long the suit would last against a similar barrage from Juggernaut, but we can infer that sooner or later, Juggernaut is going to be able to get through the suit, and he can simply continue his attack for an indefinite amount of time without getting tired. This is kind of interesting because even Superman suffers fatigue after enough exertion, and so Batman would have to be able to engineer an even stronger suit to withstand an attack from Juggernaut than he would need for Superman. And whether or not he's able to do this is really something that we don't know for sure, but it seems unlikely that Batman can make something that would be able to endure an unlimited amount of damage. And so what that means is that for Batman to win, he's actually going to have to find a way to defeat Juggernaut before his armor gives out. And whether he can actually do that is what this battle really hinges on. And I think that it actually tips this battle in Juggernaut's favor. As we discussed before, Juggernaut is the avatar of the demon Cyttorak, an extremely powerful demon. While Batman is extremely intelligent and has an almost unlimited arsenal of bleeding-edge technology at his disposal, he doesn't really have a way of neutralizing mystical, demonic energy, at least not that I know of, and especially not when the source of the energy comes from a universe that he's almost completely unfamiliar with. And so for that reason, I think that despite Batman being able to prolong his survival for a bit, he's not going to be able to harm Juggernaut and can't keep Juggernaut at bay forever. So in the end, we have to give the win to my man, Kane Marco. But with that being said, let me know down in the comments which side you guys think would win. If you guys are new here to Comics Explained, hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, drop a like. Also, fair warning, next week next week, I'm making a terrible decision and I'm going to do a video on Goku Blue versus Superman 1 million. Talk about dragging out the irrational people out there. God, that's gonna be a bad choice, but we're gonna do it anyway, because if there's anything I love, it's nailing myself to the cross for your amusement. Anyway, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end and I will catch you all later. Peace.